The Black Army of Hungary was one of the best hired armies during the late Middle Ages. When Hungary was constantly under threat from the north, south, and west, the King of Hungary found what he needed in the Black Army, a fighting force with strong discipline and loyalty. In this video, we look at how modern historians tell the story of the Black Army of Hungary. In the 15th century, Hungary faced a new problem. The Ottoman Empire had been growing stronger ever since it first appeared in history. Slowly, it began to threaten many countries in Europe during the 14th and 15th centuries. In most major battles during these years, the Hungarians often lost. The last part of the Eastern Roman Empire disappeared. After that, the Ottomans took even more control over the Balkans. The way into Europe was now wide open. Their next targets were the Venetians and the kingdoms in the Balkans, including Hungary. Now, Hungary was under constant military pressure from the Ottomans. In general, the wars between Hungary and the Ottomans didn't usually have big battles. There were a few major fights and sieges, but historian Colin I, an expert on the Ottoman Empire, says the Ottomans mainly fought small and ongoing battles in the Balkans. The term Little War means small daily military actions that happened in areas near the borders or close to battles and sieges. We talked more about these small wars in another video linked in the top right corner. In these Hungarian-Ottoman conflicts, the Ottomans mostly used local irregular soldiers to raid towns and villages, stealing goods and capturing people to sell as slaves. These raids were very profitable for the Ottoman border leaders because they could take thousands of prisoners. So the term Little War shouldn't be taken lightly. These attacks were a serious threat to Hungary as they slowly reduced its population and money. Historian Thomas Pellisfaldi says that realizing how dangerous this was, the Hungarian government made military reforms to fix the problem. Hungary set up a few defenses: a zone of small buffer states, a line of border forts, better levees, raised banks to control water, and more focus on light cavalry. The need to respond to these Ottoman raids also led to the creation of the Black Army. The Black Army wasn't just created because of the Ottomans. In 1458, Matthias Corvinus became king of Hungary. In Latin, he was known as Matthias Corvinus, which means Matthias the Raven in English. He faced many problems in the south. The Ottomans were still a big threat. In the north, a group of Hussite mercenaries, mostly Czechs and Moravians, were attacking parts of northern Hungary. The term Hussite refers to followers of Jan Hus, a religious reformer who stood up to the Catholic Church, which led to the Hussite Wars in the middle of the 15th century. We also made a video about this. Check the link in the top right corner. Even though the Hussites had passed their peak, some of their soldiers were still looting Matthias's lands. Matthias's third problem was from some powerful nobles who opposed him and supported the Habsburg ruler Frederick III as king. Frederick had claimed the Hungarian crown and, worse for Matthias, he actually had the real crown of St. Stephen, which Vladislav's mother, Elizabeth of Luxembourg, had given to him. Without the crown, Matthias couldn't fully prove he was the rightful king. Frederick III didn't want to give up the crown and kept it as a valuable bargaining tool. So Matthias had three main goals as king. First, he had to get the actual crown of Hungary to be properly crowned. Second, he needed to defeat the rebels in Upper Hungary. Third, he wanted to keep the Ottomans away from his empire. To do all this, he needed a stronger and more dependable army than Hungary's usual forces. That's where the Black Army came in. Back then, Hungary's military depended on nobles to bring their own soldiers, called the Pandor system. Also, nobles had to provide one mounted archer for every 20 peasant farms, called the militia portalis. Some changes were later made to this system, but it mostly stayed in place under Matthias. However, Matthias needed a professional army he could always count on. He needed well-trained men like those who fought in the Hussite Wars, but sadly, they were fighting against him. Their leader, Jan Žižka, supported Frederick III instead. Meanwhile, the Ottomans were gaining control of southern lands. Matthias decided to end the peace talks with Frederick III and offered him and Žižka a large amount of money. In return, he got the crown he badly needed and the help of Žižka and his mercenaries. Though it cost a lot, this helped settle things in Upper Hungary. These former raiders became the first members of what would become Matthias's hired army, the Black Army. But the Black Army didn't start all at once. It grew and developed over the years. Thomas Pellisfy says it only really became a permanent institution in the 1470s, with its size changing depending on the campaign. The name Black Army didn't appear until after the army was gone, and we don't know for sure what it meant. Some say it came from a famous leader called John the Black Haugwitz. Others think it's because of their black armor, but most scholars disagree with that idea, since King Matthias himself said in a letter to the Bishop of Ager that the army wasn't uniform in how it looked or was made up. Even though the letter doesn't tell us why the army was called black, it gives us a lot of details about the army itself. Matthias said it had both heavy and light cavalry, expert gunners, and foot soldiers. The soldiers were from many different backgrounds, at first mostly Czechs, Moravians, Poles, and Germans. Later, Hungarians joined too. The foot soldiers were divided into regular and armored infantry. The armored ones were called armati, which means armed in Latin. Both types probably used weapons like spears, pikes, and halberds. The armati were helped by the clipati, who were shield bearers carrying big shields popular at the time. Matthias said they would form a circle that looked like a fork, and they fought from behind it like a moving wall. This allowed fighters with shorter weapons to go out and return safely, and the same for archers, crossbowmen, and gunners. This setup reminded people of the Hussite wagon fort, or the Swiss pike square. But unlike them, the Black Army didn't depend much on war wagons. Their formation was a mix of Eastern and Western pike tactics and moving together. Today, such a shield circle isn't very useful anymore when it comes to fighting the Ottomans. The biggest change during Matthias's rule was the growth of light cavalry called hussars. They carried bows, crossbows, lances, shields, and sabers. They were modeled after older cavalry types in the Balkans and inspired by Ottoman cavalry. Some believe this style started in Serbia, but that's still debated. Hungary needed these light cavalry units to raid and fight back along the southern border. Even in bigger battles like Bradfield, both sides mostly used cavalry. In another letter, Matthias said his army had around 20,000 cavalry and only 8,000 infantry. That might surprise people, since many wrongly believe the Black Army was mostly foot soldiers. But Thomas Palissy says this is definitely not true anymore. Of course, infantry played an important role, mostly in the north and west, and in guarding castles along the south. This chain of forts from Side to Belgrade was the backbone of Hungary's defense. Some were built earlier, but were upgraded and used for both raids and big battles. Infantry was key in sieges, but rarely fought in big battles on the southern front. Two big examples are the sieges of Ża in 1463 and Sabach in 1475. Still, infantry saw more action in the north and west, where fighting with Frederick III had started again. There, they mostly did sieges and small attacks. Palissy explains the lack of infantry on the Ottoman front was needed because the king didn't want to fight a big battle with the main Ottoman army. The Ottoman border armies also mostly used light cavalry. Despite all his efforts, Matthias couldn't defeat the Ottomans alone, and help from Europe and the Pope was small. Knowing this, he focused more on fighting his enemies in the north and west, and he succeeded. Still, the Ottoman border leaders kept raiding Hungary, so Matthias had to keep his southern defenses strong. Along with the Black Army in the north, Hungary also paid another army for the south. Plus, they could raise the Banderio force when needed. That means Hungary had 3 armies, most of them active full-time.
They have waited
In the
long
end,
enough.
the
We must
huge
pay
cost
them.
became
We don't
too
have
much.
the funds. The
Thomas
royal treasury
Palissy
is
sums it
empty.
up.
He leaves us
Since
to
even the
deal with this
richest
mess while
country,
he hides
France,
away.
had only just started building a full-time army in the late 1400s, and Venice avoided it for money reasons, Matthias's military work was really ahead of its time. But the cost of keeping 3 full-time armies, especially the Black Army, became a major reason why Hungary collapsed after Matthias died. The country just couldn't afford the Black Army anymore. It was disbanded shortly after Matthias Corvinus died in 1490. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our patrons for supporting the channel. Want to join them? Find the links in the description box below.